Hello, I'm Beth. Welcome to a new video in my Variations for Individualized Practice series. This is a series of videos in which I take one pose and show you many different variations, ways to adapt the pose to your body, using props, using different versions of the pose. Remember that this is not going to be every version of the pose that there is. I'm going to show you a number of different versions that you can try, that you can experiment with at home. So it's not really follow along as much as kind of a workshop or a tutorial where you can learn some new ideas and then take them into your other classes. So today we'll be doing a really common sequence. It's actually two poses called cat-cow. It shows up in so many yoga classes, and there's a traditional way to practice and then many other options. So we'll be doing that today. Join me over at your mat, gather all your props around, and we'll start this practice. All right, so I'll set up for the most common version of cat-cow, which is the kneeling version. Now remember, most common or traditional just means how you will see it most often. It doesn't mean that this is the only way, which we'll show today. So we start on hands and knees in a tabletop position, fingers spread nice and wide. So our fingers form part of the foundation of the pose, our hands. Hands are placed somewhere under our shoulders and knees under our hips. And as we start to talk about varying, one way we can vary is our arms and our legs. So that's what we'll get to first. First, I'll just show you, again, how it's usually taught. We start in this tabletop position. On an inhale, we allow the spine to sink toward the earth or the mat. Start to look forward a little bit. Tip your tailbone up to the sky. And that's your cow pose, with imagining these being the udders of the cow. And then as you exhale, beginning to arch the back like an angry cat, tucking the tailbone, chin toward chest, crown of the head down, rounding into a big arch shape. And then it's usually practiced back and forth. So the first thing we can vary in practicing this is actually the breath. Many times it's taught inhale, belly down, exhale, draw the belly in and up. That might not feel comfortable to you, so you can try it the other way around. Exhale, release, and then inhale, arch up. Exhale, release, and inhale, arch up. And if for whatever reason that doesn't work for you, you can breathe naturally. You always have the option of breathing naturally if adding your breath to the pose seems to make things too complicated or you're just not ready to do that. The next thing we can vary is the position of our head. So you saw me move my head with my spine, or actually move the head beyond into a curve back and forth. This is a forward bend and back bend. So I added a forward bend and back bend with my neck. We can keep the neck more neutral with the spine. So again, starting in your tabletop position, you can see how the back of my neck is neutral. So when I arch up into cat, rather than taking my chin toward my chest, I'm just going to keep that neutral position of the head. And sometimes I can feel better on the neck. And then same thing. When I sink down into cow, I could lift my head up with my chin up, or I can keep it in this more neutral position. All right, the next thing we're going to show some variations on is our hands, the position of our arms. Your limbs are something that you can vary basically in every pose. So sometimes people's wrists bother them. These variations might be helpful if your wrists bothering you, putting weight on your hands. The first one is simple fist. You can do this anyway. I kind of like to do it with thumbs out for support. And you move through the pose in this way. The second way that can actually help stretch the wrists a little bit is to turn your hands around, fingertips toward you. And if that feels like too much of an extreme turn, they can be turned so the fingertips are out. So you might notice with fingertips toward you, you get a little bit more stretch in the front of your wrist as you move through your cat-cow. And yeah, this feels really nice for me today. We can also take our hands out of it completely and come down onto our forearms. I'll rest on my forearms. And this will also shift where I feel the cat-cow. You might find this shifts it a little bit more into your upper back rather than low back, which is really nice for me because I need to stretch that area a little more. As you come forward like that, if the ground feels too far away, let's start using some props. I'm going to take a yoga bolster. You can take any kind of pillow or couch cushion as your prop, and you can place your forearms on it that way to give yourself a little more lift. So you're a little closer to the shape of the traditional pose then if you want to get it through your whole spine and yet support your arms. And then one more way to do that for the arms and hands. And remember, there may be dozens more ways. We're just giving an overview of some common things that you can do to try. Blocks. Blocks are really handy to have. Mine are foam. Blocks can go right under the hands. And again, you'll get a little more lift. And in fact, this way, because you're higher up, you might feel more of a stretch in your low back. If you don't have a bolster, you can also use the blocks as a forearm support. All right, so we'll be staying on the knees a little bit longer. If you are following along, you need a break, shake out, go right ahead and do that. So I'm going to put my hands back in the traditional position. You can, if there was a version of the hands that you really liked, you can stay with that hand version. So keep in mind that all of these variations can mix and match together. That's perfect because it helps you find the perfect VIP pose for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab my blanket under the knees. I feel fine with my knees. I'm on a mat and on carpet. You might feel something on your kneecaps. It doesn't feel good. That's where a blanket or a little bit of support under your knees can feel really nice. So again, same thing. We move through the poses. A little bit more softness and comfort for our bodies. And then the position of the legs and the hands too can vary. I said the hands usually go about under your shoulders. They can be a little further away if that feels better for your body. And right now I have my legs hip width. You can experiment with what does it feel like to take your legs more than hip width. Finding these variations is often about a curiosity about your own body, kind of exploring like a scientist, collecting data to see what works for you. So a few other leg variations. All right, so I showed you just support under your legs. Let's grab a block and put it between the thighs. I'm pushing in with my block and doing the poses that way. Now for me, using the block in this way helps me feel like I can engage the muscles around my core area a little bit more. And I feel more stability for my low back. You can see how that feels for you. Take the block away. The next thing we're going to do is simply tuck the toes. So you might see this happen in class, that somebody, instead of having the tops of their feet on the floor, tucks their toes. Either is fine. Sometimes I'll tuck the toes in this pose or in child pose to help me avoid foot cramps. All right, and then a few more variations that are going to shift how you feel the pose a little bit. One is to lift the feet. And as you lift the feet, you might notice that it requires a little bit more balance effort. And then the other one is to place the feet back down, tuck the toes, and lift the knees. Now, not only does this require more balance effort, but this is a much stronger pose. It's a little bit of a hand balance now, an arm balance. So if you want to change this from a stretch to a lot of strength, that's a version of the pose for you. There are other versions on hands and knees where we can do a balancing version. I'm not going to show those things because that's really moving into different poses and getting away from cat-cow. So we're going to stay with cat-cow today. But one last thing I'll show you on hands and knees is we can take it a little bit more one-legged. So you can move one leg out to the side, and as you move your body here, you might notice that you're still getting the spine stretch, but now maybe you feel it a little bit more work in your hip joint too. So it's kind of a little bonus. And if there's a particular area of the spine that you want to get more at, like the side of your back, you can also move your hands off to the side. So when I do cat-cow here, I can really feel not just the spine, but the lateral muscles of my back stretching. So shifting your hands around where they are on the mat or even off the mat can move the work from not just your spine stretching, but getting some of all the surrounding muscles. All right, so next I'm going to lie on the floor. I usually end these little tutorials with lying on the floor. Today I'm going to do lying on the floor and end with standing because I think lying on the floor here is a little bit of a harder way, at least for me, to do my cat-cow. I'm going to lie down. I'm going to keep my knees bent. Arms can be wherever. I'm going to start with them open and then I'll take them to behind my head. So I'm going to start first with the cowl pose. It's upside down, keep in mind. So I'm going to push my tailbone into the floor, push my shoulder blades into the floor, and get a big arch in my low back. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm really pushing into the parts that are touching the floor. You can even use your arms to help with this lift a little bit. And then as I exhale, there are a couple different ways to do this. I'm going to place my hands at my ears and do a little bit of a crunch. So I'm scooping my tailbone under, pushing my low back, my low ribs into the floor, and coming into a little bit of a crunch. You can also do this with the arms reaching up or the palms interlaced and reaching, and then release. So that's the lying version, and that's another version that's going to engage the core a little bit more. Let's roll up and come to seated. Seated is a wonderful way to do cat-cow. It's a great way to do it if you're seated at work, you're seated at a desk. And in fact, I'll show you in a chair in a moment. If you're seated on the floor, you can sit in any position of the legs that's comfortable for you. It can be a tighter cross leg, a looser cross leg, a cobbler's pose or butterfly. So any position that you can start with the spine upright, just like we started in our kneeling in tabletop with the spine long. And then resting your hands wherever you'd like. I'm going to first draw my spine in and back, coming into a seated cat. And then for seated cow, I'm going to move my chest forward, looking up, drawing my shoulder blades together. That feels really nice. And releasing. So you can do other arm positions. I'll actually show you those when we stand up. I want to show you the chair first. So I'm going to move my chair over here. First to show you that the chair can be another option for your forearms. So just like we did, this is going to be a different feeling, right? Different feeling because we're higher up now. But you can still take it through that same movement. Rounding and arching. And simply noticing, remember that curiosity of where does this pose shift for you as you shift where you're doing it. So let's turn around. I'm going to keep the chair like this so you can see me sideways, seated in a chair, feet planted. We can do the same thing we did on the floor. Tuck our chin, round our back, cat pose. Forward, look up, shoulders back, cow pose. I'm going to turn around and show you can also do this with your hands on the wall. I would turn my chair to the wall, but I'm going to keep it this way just for ease of filming. Hopefully you can get a sense of this. Hands would go right on the wall, and same thing. Arching and curving your back. That piece is the key to cat-cow pose, the forward bend and the back bend. That's really what cat-cow pose is. It's a forward bend, back bend, warm up for your spine. So one more time, seated. As you round, as you hinge here at the hips, your cat pose, this is your forward bend. As you open across the chest, engage your back muscles, this is your back bend. And it's wonderful to move the spine in both of those directions throughout our day. All right, I'll set the chair aside. And then we'll finish with a few versions of standing. Please join me standing if you are following along today. So in standing, it's the same thing. Here I'm really going to show you some more arm versions or arm variations that you can try. You can stand in your mountain pose formation with the feet wherever you like them for mountain pose, maybe right under your hips, maybe a little bit of a wider stance. Maybe you want to do your cat-cow and more of a toes turned out or knees bent. This is goddess pose. So legs can be however helps you feel stable in your lower body as we move through the spine. I'm going to take a mountain pose. I usually like my mountain pose fairly wide. It's going to take a wide pose. Now I like to use my arms when standing to really get a bigger stretch in the spine. So one of my favorite versions or favorite ways to do that is with cactus arms. So as I open my arms, open my elbow away from each other, draw my shoulder blades back, I feel like I can really get that cow action. And then on moving with breath, I can tuck my head, bring my elbows together, round my back. And you can do that opening out into a T, sending your fingers away from each other, maybe even your fingertips toward the back of the room. And then you can bring your hands forward, maybe just reaching them forward, maybe interlacing them and pushing them away. One more time because it feels so good. Any version that you'd like. There's no right or wrong way as long as you feel that opening across the front body, across the chest, when you open into your cow, and then that releasing across the back body as you come forward, rounding the back, rounding everything into your cat pose. So those are our variations today. I hope you found this useful. I hope this was fun for you, a chance for you to find the version of poses that work for you. Please check out my other VIP yoga series, poses. Really, the whole idea is to make your practice your own. That's what I want to impart as a yoga teacher. So I hope I helped you do that today. Please like this and comment so I know what you like. Feel free to subscribe and get notifications as well. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.